Hi, my name is Ebenezer Zafodo. I'm a business strategy consultant and a data specialist. Welcome to my YouTube channel. All too soon, the Power BI free course for YouTube is ending today. Today is day 5. This is the 5th video of the Power BI training. I've actually gone through most of the things that one needs for as a basic or a beginner in Power BI. Maybe in subsequent weeks or in some months to come, I'll look at doing advanced courses for different areas. As you may be aware, there are like 3 or 4 main parts of data science. The first is the transformation, that's the mangling of the data and cleaning the data. Then you model the data and also you visualize the data. So that is the last part is mostly the communication. Sometimes some people include exploratory data analysis, that's the EDA. For before even probably you start your modeling, you'd want to explore the data to see what the data might be telling you by intuition to know what to do. So that makes it for sometimes before everything starts. So we've been doing a lot of transformation, some part of data modeling, but not into details. We basically did the database modeling. Um, this particular tutorial does not go in depth, so maybe some other time we'll look at other data modeling and other analysis. So today being the last day, we are going to look at an interesting topic, which is the data visualization. It's the last part of always every data science job. After you've done the solution, I mean, after, data science is basically solving problems with data. So after finding the solution to the problem, you need to communicate to whoever asked the question or whoever brought the project to you or whoever the end user may be. The end user is likely not to be a data nerd like you are, so you need to communicate the result or the solution to the end user, and that's a lot of work, and it also requires some kind of skills. So it's like a data scientist is sometimes seen as a magician, but I think the best thing for a data scientist is to always collaborate with others, because you may not be a master of all these areas at the same time being an expert in the area that you are trying to solve. So collaboration is key for data scientists. So today, our last day, we're going to look more on data visualization, that is communicating the final results to the end user for usage, which would also form a feedback into the loop, because once the solution is found, more data will be created, and then it continues in that cycle. Okay, so let me quickly move into our data set that we've been using. All right. So we've been using the financial data set and the COVID data set. If you watched the last video, you realize that we've created some measures and we are going to use them today also, especially the financial formulas. Always, one thing I'll talk about visualization is that it is like 20% of the work, but most importantly, it is the work that people see. People will not see all the works or the transformation that you've done in the past. What they will see is the last part that we are going to look at. So if your visualization, after going through all that work, after going through all that exercise of transforming your data, analyzing, creating measures, doing that beautiful work by solving the problem, if your visualization, which is the last part, the communication part, is not done properly, people may not be able to relate. Communication is very important in data. Your ability to communicate very complex solutions simply to the end user is very important. This mostly is the art part of data science. So data science, even though the name is data science, is an art and a science, because you would have to be creative in data science also to be able to solve problems, especially when it comes to communicating with the end user. So one thing I always advise my people who I teach is that always seek for inspiration when it comes to your visualization. You need to probably go to somebody who is already in the field, or go online, go to Pinterest, or any other source you may get to probably find what I call inspiration. Go for something that would like bring out the best design in you. So we'll look at all that today. But first, let me take you through some theory so as we'll practically understand before we come to the dashboard itself. All right. So in when it comes to Power BI, we normally create what we call dashboards. So even though it's a report, you are creating the dashboard for view. So that is what you do in Power BI. But let's go through these steps. The first question you need to ask yourself is, why this report or this dashboard? So why am I doing this? So for instance, if it's the financial data that we've been working with, why this report or why this dashboard? Maybe this dashboard is going to be used by the sales department to always monitor the sales, and also looked by the executive management to monitor the profit of the organization and which items are giving us most profit. The why would determine how your dashboard would be built. Do you get it? So if you are going to build a dashboard with probably many visuals, then it's going to dependent on why. If you are going to build a very simple dashboard or a basic dashboard, then you should know why. Maybe it's because it's going to be used by one unit. If it's going to be used by multiple units, that also introduces a different concept that you are going to look at. So the why would always determine the how the dashboard is going to look like, and the how would now determine what you would have to put in, what kind of visuals you'd have to put in, what kind of um, like the placement. That's the what. So the why is very important. You need to find out, who am I designing this dashboard for? If it is for just accountants, you know they like numbers. If it is for non-accountants, you know maybe some graphs would be more ideal for them. So it's important that you balance all this, especially the why. Know why you are building this dashboard or report. And the second thing that you need to do is to keep it simple. This is art. The simpler the dashboard, the easier it is for people to relate to. It's communication, simplicity, being able to like bring complex matters into simple terms is what we are looking at. And be consistent. Like any report that you build, if it was a word report, you would ensure that the same text is used throughout. So the same way in your Power BI report, make sure that the same font is used throughout. The spacing also is another issue that you have to look at. Make sure that the spacing is the same throughout. And I'll talk about spacing in the next slide. All right. So spacing. So it's important that you follow these Gestalt principles with regards to spacing. I'll maybe touch one or two of them and we'll continue. It says that objects grouped together tend to be perceived as a single figure. So if you group a lot of objects together, maybe you have like 3 or 4 cars that you've grouped together, to the eye it would be seen as one thing, or they are related. So it's important you look at the spacing and look at the second one on proximity. You realize that those that are closely grouped together are seen as related, and this one are seen as different. So it's the same way we need to observe these principles when we are designing. Now let me go through some 15 basic rules to design a perfect dashboard. There can probably never be a perfect dashboard, but permit me to use maybe a better dashboard. This is something that I picked from SQL BI, Marco Russo and his team. So let's go through it quickly. So rule number 1, design for a target. I just talked about it. In Power BI, always design for a target. Who are you designing for? keep everything at a glance. I mean, what is the point in making some objects hide under others? If it's not necessary, then take it out. Everything has to be in a glance. Then I talked about keep it simple, so I'll not overemphasize on that. Then align objects. I mean, objects that are important, you need to make sure that it's maybe seen as bigger, and make sure that there's an alignment, especially let's say on the same axis, on the same horizontal axis, or like you need to align objects so as it's easier for the eye, and be consistent throughout, which I talked about earlier. Then highlight the most relevant information. So if an information is supposed to be more important than the other, make sure that you highlight it in a certain way, maybe using colors, using the sizes. And number 7, be clear. I mean, clarity is why you want to design. Then your axis should start from 0. Always ensure that, otherwise you'll be giving the end users a different picture from what is actually happening. Sometimes people just want to show the very fine details of the changes. For instance, maybe you are looking at prices and the price change from 4.123 to 4.124. So you want to start your axis from 4.12. If you do that, you'll be sending the wrong signal, because the change is not that significant, yet your graph is showing a significant change. So it's important that you start your axis, whether x or y axis, from 0. It's ideal you do that, unless you are probably in the medical field where small changes are required to be shown. Otherwise, I would always advise start your axis from 0. If the changes are very small, that is what it is. Let the communication be that the change was small. So start from 0. Then shorten the numbers. Ideally, if you have, let's say, 60 billion, you don't necessarily have to write all the 9 figures. Especially dashboards and reports are summary report, unless it's going to be used by accountant, which would mean that probably shortening the numbers. But ideally, for management purposes, you'd have to shorten the numbers. I mean, to the million or to the billion, depending on the figure that you have. And show context. It's one important thing that people would always have to do when it comes to communication in data. The data is always contextualized, whether we like it or not. There is a context to the data, so always show a context, the context in which the data is situated. So in context, you can be doing comparisons to other companies, or comparison to the previous week, or one product to the other, so as we would know the context in which the data is. Then choose the right colors. I cannot mention that enough. I mean, it's art, so it's important that you don't do some primary color thing that people look at it. If it's mainly if you are designing for an organization, your organizational colors should direct what you use. Then in Power BI, we design dashboards, not reports. What does it mean? It means that whatever you are designing is going to be consumed as it is. It's not now that you are going to rearrange them into dashboards. It's going to be as it is. Whatever you design, let that be one tool or one tip that you always use. And show variations. It's similar to contest. If there are changes, let us see the changes that are happening so as we can follow. I mean, whoever is looking at the data should see, okay, last week it was this week it was that, there was a 5% change. Then leave the noise off. This requires that if something is not important, don't put it there. If it's just noise, it is just making noise in the data set, just leave it out and pick the right charts. I think after I've gone through some few practicals with what I've just said, would go into what charts. I mean, the question that I normally get is, what charts should I use for this and what charts should I use for that? So picking the right charts is basically what you are doing when it comes to communication. I always say that charts are like the actors of a movie. So your Power BI dashboard is like a story or a movie that you are producing, and the actors are the charts. If you use a small boy to play the role of an old lady, you distort the meaning. You make your viewers, instead of rather following the story and seeing how things are moving, they will rather criticize, what is this, who is this, how it does not relate. Even when you are reading storybooks, you form images for yourself of the characters. So it's important that in visualization you choose the right charts, because these are your characters that you are using to produce your story or communicate. All right, so with that, these are just a recap. A good dashboard is simple and easy to read. It is designed to be used for every day, so it can require any effort from its users. When you design a beautiful dashboard, always ask yourself if the graphics are related to the data and convey meaning. If not, cut them out. This was had to do with cut the noise off, and never use dark backgrounds. I may go against this sometimes, but I mean, unless it is required, always use the white backgrounds. It's only in few cases that this exception holds. Like there's an exception to this. Maybe you are doing stock market where dark theme is best. All right. So there we have it. So basically, these are the tips that I'll give to anybody who wants to design a dashboard. First is getting what do you want to explain. So the title would always be there. Then, so maybe sales report of a Jedu company is always there. It's always supposed to be at the top, because it's like any report that a person picks, he's supposed to get the title of the report in front of the book, or it should be visible. So always the title will be at the top. These are just some cheat sheets. Then what is happening? So you first have to tell us what is happening. So what is happening requires that, okay, total sales. It's like the summary of the entire report. So normally you use cards to show what is happening. Then another question you need to ask is, when did this happen? So when, so time factor. So you'll be using something like line charts to look at when did this what happen. Then where, which country, maybe which location where all these transactions happen. Then how, so that means the channels in which these things were happening. Maybe there was paid through mobile money or some different ways on which the data actually happened. Then why? This is one of the most challenging side of data analysis, which is the diagnostics, where you find out why something happened. So that is basically a summary to help you know exactly what to do, even if you don't know where to place what. So let's go quickly and probably practice what I just taught, and we'll come back to the theory. Okay, so we have our dashboard. First thing you need to always do, like I said, is to bring your title. What do we want to explain? So in this case, I have my title as a Jedu sales report. So always start with the title. The title could take the entire page or a part of, like the entire top section or a part of it, depending on the things you would want to put in. If your dashboard has a lot of visuals in it, then maybe you'd want to squeeze the size of the title to maybe just a small part of your report, maybe just this part. But for now, let's probably just open it up and let me center. Let me change the font to 24. Okay, so I'm just using, maybe let me change my color to blue, because maybe our corporate colors are blue and white. I can also change maybe the background to rather blue, just to add some color to it, and then change my text rather to white. Alright, there you have it. So I just do sales report, just to give it some color. Okay, so now the first question we need to ask is the what. In the what, you'd always use the cards. So normally I would always even tell people that before you start your visualization or your communication, you need to ask the research objectives or the problems that were brought to you, so as you know what you are answering. Maybe they ask you want to find total sales, you want to, so you ask questions like what is total sales, what is the total profit, what is, so you write all of them down so as you know what to display. All right, so let's go. Normally the what that we learned from the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so the what would always be with cards. I hope that is clear. So that's what we're answering. There are two ways I always tell people that you could do with the cards. Always display the cards first to give a summary of what has happened. So normally you can either arrange them horizontally. Okay, let me first teach you something. I'm sure you are seeing some lines in mine which you might not be seeing in yours. So you go to view, then you open the grid lines, you check the grid lines. So yours may be like there's a plain sheet, so just check the grid lines and you would be good to go. All right, so that you have at least something to guide where to place what. All right, so let me bring my, so I've chosen a card, and then let me go to my formula because that's what basically we are going to use. Let me pick first the total sales. Right. There are two ways of putting the formula or the measure or a column inside the fields. One is just by clicking, especially when it has only one field, then you can just click and it will just go there. Otherwise you'd always have to drag and drop and show where it's going. Okay, so our total sales is 118.73 million. I think the size is too big. One thing that you need to know is you need to learn the formatting tools that are available for every visual. Every visual you choose has its format. So the next one after the fields is format. So this is where you format this visual. Maybe you don't like the size, the font size, so let's probably reduce it to 23. Okay, and then I think that's okay. The category is what you see down here, the total sales. So if I put it off, it goes off. If I put it on, it goes on. You know, wrap, word wrap, just like test wrap in Word. So if I want to show the name of the measure or the column, I bring in the category. So there are two ways. It's either I put the category on, which will come down, or put it off and go to title and then put it on. So I can come and type the total sales. So irrespective of the name of the measure, I can then come here and type a title for it. The title takes lesser space. You can also align to the middle. You can change the title color. All right. So that's the next title. That's just for the card. And the second thing is background. Maybe I want to rather change the background to blue like how we had it in the, so blue. Then I would have to then change my title to white because I cannot have a blue background and a black text. Then the label itself too, I'll change the color to white. All right. So I have my total sales. What next do we want to see? Maybe the next thing would be, so I can either bring in another card, because I'm going to use another card. While I'm going to use another card, I can either bring it in and go through all the formatting again, or I can just do Control C and Control V, just like you'd copy and paste. Whoever brought copy and paste, we should thank the person. So it makes it easier. Then I'll just come into the fields, uncheck total sales, and I'll put in maybe total cost of goods sold. But remember, the title was hard coded, so if it was a category, it would have come by itself. But because we are using a title, we'd have to come in here and change total sales to total cost of goods sold. Alright, so there we have it, our total cost of goods sold. So we are still on the what. Let's look at another thing, which is total profit. Alright, so let me go to my title and change it to total profit. Let me show you one other thing maybe I may have not gone through to the last. It's border. So sometimes you can create borders, put it on, change the border color to maybe blue, and one thing that you can do is to change the radius. So the radius would curve the ends to give it that curvy look. That's if you like to curve your. You can do same for even the title, but once I've done one, remember format painter in Excel or in Word. You can just format painter and format the other one. It would also change its borders, and I have some curvy look. Okay, so now let's go to the next item, which is maybe total quantity sold. So 1 million products. So you see 1M. Maybe the M is too small. We are not able to see too many information about that. So I'll change the display. You go to the label, you change the display units to maybe 1,000. So and decimal place, let's maybe make it 2. So you have 1125K. Or you can do none, and then it will show everything. You can also format this and bring in the commas so as it's easier to be read. Now let me even change there. So we have about 1.125 million, or you can even leave it at millions and just give us 2 decimal places so as it's easy. 1.13 million. There's no profit. Once you use the title, you always have to remember to go into total quantity sold. Alright, so now let's probably bring in something. What other does the change in sales? It has to have at least some filter to make it work. Alright, why don't we create a measure on profit margin, which is the profit over total sales. So let's create a new measure. And call it the profit margin. It's equal to divide, remember what we learned, profit, comma, over sales, and our alternate result is 0. So I have profit margin. I didn't choose the right place to put it, so it went into calendar. I want it to be in financial format, so I changed the home table. Alright, so now I have my profit margin. Should make it a percentage, format it into a percentage. So instead of total quantity, it's a million, so I have to change the label to none. 14.23. So at least I think this would be okay. Let me probably add the total transactions. Data label, no decimal places. So, and let me go to my title and now call it total transactions. All right, so now we have a problem here. We might have to resize our cards to accommodate. I can do this, or to make sure that the sizes are the same, I can just select all of the cards, come to format. The format, normally the general actually shows the width and the height. So I can then change maybe this width to 170. So as once I change the width here, it changes all the width so that I don't have to have unequal sizes. Maybe let me add 175. All right, I think that's okay. And let me arrange them. You see, maybe the spacing may not be equal. So to correct that also, there's a way out. You select all of them, go to view, no, go to format, go to align, then you say distribute horizontally because on the horizontal axis. So as the spacing would be equal. There's a lot of things that you can do at the align. There's also align at the bottom, so as all the bottom, like they'll all be at the same line. So, but currently all we need to do is to align them horizontally. So now the spacing in between each of them are the same. Okay, so now we have the what. Okay. What I would always advise is that either you create a space, you would always have to use filters in your visuals or in your communication because visual filters help in user friendliness. It's part of the UI, user interface design, that you have to use to help the user be able to navigate based on what they want. So in this case, for the Ejado report, I've aligned center, so let me now probably bring it here and create a space where I'll put in my filters. So the filters help us to probably answer questions like where. So let me create a filter. The filter is that slicer. It's rather a slicer. Filters are here. They actually perform the same function. You can actually bring in a filter on a particular visual or on the entire page. So I can bring in maybe a particular month I want to see and filter the entire page. But when you put it here, it means that the entire page is filtered. The person does not have the option to choose what they want. So let me put in a filter and bring in a date. Okay, so now I have a date filter and there's a between. I can change it to probably a list, but I prefer the between for this. So I can put in this filter so that my users can be able to filter in between a certain date and a certain another date. So there you have it. Let me see if my date model is connected to my, let me see. Okay, the date is connected. All right, so I have date here and date, so as a person can come in here and choose maybe from 3rd, or let's say maybe you can select a particular month, so it's starting from maybe 24th October. You see it changes, so that let's say it's the finance manager that's using might wants to see some particular date instead of. All right, let me expand it. There's this box here, clear selection, to clear whatever selection that was made. All right, so the focus mode helps you focus on what you want to. So we can change this from between to maybe a list. It gives a whole list. Maybe it can be a drop down, so as it's just all, then you select which one you want to. All right, so instead of a date, maybe we can change it to year. So as, I mean, if they want to see a particular year, or we can have month year instead. So month year, so it means that the person can come in here and filter particular months and years. All right. There's one thing that I had to teach, which was making sure that, let's say month year or month, let me probably choose month so as you see what I'm talking about. You can choose month, but you realize that it will be in alphabetical order. I'll later show you how you can correct that to make it based on January, February, March. So the person can come here and choose which month they want. So to do that and make it arrange according to the January, February, March, you come to the data part. There are several ways of doing this, but I always prefer coming to the data source. Then you select the month. Now we want it to sort by the month number because it shouldn't sort by alphabetical order. So when you select that column, you come here and do sort column and do sort column by, so the column that I've selected, it should be sorted by the month number. All right, with that, now when I come here, it will be January, February, March. Okay, so that's my first slicer that I've introduced. Maybe there could be another slicer on the country. So instead of month, this time I wanted to slice based on, let's go to the financial stable and choose country. So it means that whoever is my user can come in here and just select a particular country they want to see. All these filters, slicers, help the person see what they want to view. Then maybe the last one would be, let me select this and go to segments. All right. So I have 3 different slicers that would help. So if you want to just select those by government, it will affect everything in here. They can uncheck it back. Let me see if I can do some nice formatting for it to go with so for the filter, these are the selection controls. Whether it's multiple, they can select just one, or they can select multi-select. Currently it's multi-select, and there's the select all option, which you should also check. So as the first option will be select all. Let me do that for all. I could have just formatted Painter. Okay, so that's the selection controls. The slicer header, you can put it off on. You can change the font color to maybe a white. Wow, you can't see it. Maybe when I change the background to blue, will be seen. All right, so there you have it. So let me just do one and probably format the Painter for the others. Items is the actual thing that is in there. The font color, I can also make that white and make this blue. So as when you come here, you can just select. All right. So let me select this and do format Painter on that. And do format Painter on this too. So maybe it's not that appealing to the eye because there are so many spaces. So in the items, let me see if there's background. So let's do the background blue. So as the entire background is blue and it will flash in there. Right. Okay. Maybe we want to introduce some borders so as we'll see where it starts. So we can bring in the border. I'll make the border white. And then maybe let me do some radius. Okay. So as it can be seen in a certain way. Okay. So there you have it. My filters. Always, every report that you design, you should have a place that you put filters. Could be here, or you could just create a small box here. Let's say maybe a text box. Then you put all the filters in there. You can color it and put all the filters in there. And then it means that maybe the whole space here would be filters, this entire space. All right. Then you rearrange the what questions. All right, let's go to the where and the how. And all right, so first, where with this data set we have the countries. And the best way to do comparisons with countries is to use the clustered bar chart or clustered. I'll actually go through which visuals we should use for what. So country in the axis, and my value is sales because this is a sales report. So I have sales per country, shows that US was the most sold. But I mean, before the where, let's look at, I mean, definitely every data would want to see what happened, let's say the time series. So I bring in a line chart and look at, for line charts, which I'll show later, use them for only dates. So line charts are just for trends. So always make sure that your line chart, the axis has dates there, date or year, something with regards to date, with regards to trends. So now let me use my month year and go to my COVID, my financial formulas, and pick sales. So this is sales by the month year from highest to lowest. So usually, let me probably also teach this on the three dots that you would see here, more options. You have to click that. You see export data, show as table, remove. So let's say show as table, what happened. It will just show you the table of what happened there. There is spotlight. You can make it a spotlight. If you do a spotlight, it will just highlight only that and blur all the others. Okay. So let me uncheck it as a spotlight. Then we have sort ascending and descending. So depending on what you want to sort, and the sort by. So for instance, I want to sort by the month year, not, and to correct this month year SEP 14 for them to follow in a certain order, I have to come here, look at the month year. This is the month year, and there's month year num. So we are going to sort just like what we did with the other one. We are going to sort it by the numbers instead of the letters. So sort month year by month year num. All right. this is sort descending, so let me do sort ascending. So I start from, so now we have it from September, October, November, December. There you have it. Okay, so this is my first trend. This showing the how it happened, date on date. This is the what. The what into should include maybe our segments. So as we see our sales per segment, okay, so let's do some formatting. So in the format, there's general, there's x-axis. Like I said, always start the axis from 0. You see that this axis starts from, let me probably focus mode, it's starting from 4 million, given a different, let me change it to a 0 axis and see what happened. This is the y-axis. So the y-axis start 0. Look at what happened. You see that this picture, the picture we first saw was not entirely the true picture. Okay, so that's why you always have to start from 0. Then there is, so I can change the axis colors by going here, the color to maybe blue. So as whatever comes there is blue. I can change the text size, concatenate title, can give it, there's a lot that you could have to go through. Let me go to my y-axis and also change the color to blue. Alright. Let me close this. Let me close that. There's secondary axis which is off. I've not used a secondary axis. Maybe later I will do that. Then there's a zoom slider. When you bring it, it helps you slice and dice. You see the slider there, it helps you slice, and it's useful sometimes but not for this particular exercise. Then data colors is important because we want maybe a blue and a white color scheme throughout. Okay, let me do the same for here. Come to the format for the column, clustered column bar chart. Now this one, let me just change maybe the colors. Let me show all colors and not use one color for all. Maybe USA I'll use blue, Canada I'll use orange, so as at least there's some differentiations in the colors that I'm using. So as one, but once you change the colors to these, note that every time you change, use Mexico in there, make sure that Mexico is used for the same color so as it does not confuse people. Because I've changed these colors, I'll not change this color, otherwise it will be confusing for whoever is viewing. But perhaps I can have a neutral color, like maybe perhaps ash instead of that blue. Alright. So now I have my sales per segment, sales per country. Let me look at other demographics that are in the data set, which shows the why or the where, the how or the where. Okay. Okay, sales by product. I want to, let me this time use a column chart. So let me do product versus sales. So we see the product that was sold the most. Let me just go and change my color to a neutral color like ash. Okay. So I have sales by product. Okay. Now for the profit margin, I think that I can impose the profit margin on these, superimpose them on these by creating a secondary value. So for instance, let's look at the profit margin, because let's say that's why you need to understand the business that you are in. The accountant or whoever you are designing this report might want to see the sales as well as what is the sales margin, because yes, this is what we are selling most, but which one are we making the most profit on, or the profit margin. So to do that, I might have to change the colors. Maybe the margin should be, I can go to custom color and do red. Right. So the profit margins are red and it's using this axis. So you see that in September, even though we sold less, we are making the most profit margin in September. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a proper correlation between the sales and the profit margin. Let me do similar for the product. These are the products we are selling more, but let me do let me see if I can do the same for product. This one does not use. Alright, so I'll uncheck that because it's not showing me what I want to see. But for instance, you can also click on the product, maybe Passio, and then it changes everything in the dashboard. These are interactive dashboards, so whatever you select now, it's just based on Passio only. You get it. You can also as well just probably create another. Let me reduce the sizes of these. Let me use the same formula that we did. Let me create a fourth one for products instead of this. Let me create a fourth one for product and select all and go to the format, general, and change the width to maybe 187. Still too big. 182. Let me do 180 then. 175. Okay. So there you have it. So now you can just come here and filter a particular product, Passio. But mind you, when you filter, you see that all the others are not seen. So that's what when you select that filter or the slicer, that's what happens. It's the same results, 33 million. This for just Passio. But when I click on Passio, it does not filter everything off. It just shows the Passio part out of the rest, apart from the cards, but the rest of the filters are filtered off. Alright, so let's finish our analysis then. So let's look at probably another. This time maybe, well, let me use a different visual. Let me use a pie chart or a donut. I prefer the donut because it has this white space in there that makes it more. So I rather prefer the donut for the sales by product, so as I will know how each product is contributing to our sales. Okay. And then let me introduce one particular visual to you. One is called decomposition tree. So in the decomposition tree, it's one useful visual which, like its name says, it decomposes. So let's say I want to find out the total profit, but I want it to decompose based on country. So that's explained by, then also by country and segment. So what I'll get here is a plus here. Let me go to focus on, so as you see what I'm doing. So total profit, when I click on the plus, it shows me the highest values by country first, this by segment, and then I'll ask it by the highest values, which is by country. So it breaks it down into segment and then breaks the segment into country. So it's a very useful visual that can give you the breakdown of the various parts. All right, so that is the decomposition, which is down here. Let me show you another interesting AI visual, which is called the key influencers. So the key influencers run analytics and show you that what influences total profit to increase, and it's saying when the segment is government. Do you get it? It's just showing you that when the segment is government, your profit is likely to increase. So with this, you now know as a business that, okay, when I sell more to government, I make more money, maybe because government costs are inflated. So that is it for. So it just even shows here total profit is more likely to increase when segment is government than otherwise on the average. So that's one useful visual. So now we have our dashboard. Let me just introduce maybe borders. And let me change the radius to maybe 5, like what I've been doing. Let me just format, because all of them would have borders. Ouch. It's going to be. Let me undo and just, because when I format it would use the colors in the old one. Okay, let me escape. Let me just go and do my borders on each. Change the color to blue and the radius to 5. Change the color to, so put the border on, change the color to blue and the radius to 5. Okay. Change the color to blue, the border, the radius to 5. Right. So let me do the same. This one did not change there. So the other formats that you can get for each visual, like I said, each visual comes with its own format. Okay, so there's border, change the color to blue, just to 5. Let me change border color to blue, So there you have it. We built our first dashboard for the financial data set with like some 6 visuals. Let me probably introduce you to another visual. Although our space is full, we could have done a scattered chart. You can actually duplicate the entire page so as you have the same page by it. Okay, so let me delete probably the last two and introduce some other charts we did not use, so as you also get. There's this chart called Smart Narrative. Sometimes your Smart Narrative may not be highlighted because you have not checked the settings. So go to Options and Settings, go to Options, and go to Preview Features and check and see whether Smart Narratives have been checked. Sometimes you have to check for all to be able to use it properly. Alright, well, mine is checked, so this is what the Smart Narrative is. You can hover and see the Smart Narrative. What it's going to do is it's going to analyze what I have here and give a narrative on it. So let me probably see if it's in the focus mode. So that is it. I have saying total sales and profit margin diverged the most when the month year was October 14, when total sales was 12 million, higher than the profit margin. Saying at 12 million in October had the highest total sales and was 176% higher than September 13. So that is one way of. You can actually train this. Maybe in one other video I'll just teach how to train your Smart Narrative, so as, for instance, if you have a report that you always generate the same thing, you don't want to probably type the reasons for some things happening. You can train it like that every time when the data change, it just gives you what is actually happening. So that is the Smart Narrative. It's a very useful tool. There's also Q&A, where you can actually bring in question and answers and then ask a question. For instance, you can type in, what is the product with the highest, so as you sales. So as you type in, it's actually trying to give you answers. The product with highest sales. Alright. Saying pass you. So the answer is already here. Do you get it? So that's the test analytics Q&A. There's a way to train it also specially, and like I said, I'll do probably a video on how to train. So there's the Q&A setup. It can be trained to be able to learn new features, names, a lot more. Synonyms, you can give a synonym, so as when you type maybe highest, instead of highest you say most. All that is there. Okay, let me teach you another thing on especially the trend. In the trend, you realize that the analytics pane after the format becomes active. It means that you can now start, because the trend, you can look for the constant line, the minimum line, the maximum, the median, and a host of them. So that is for the trend line. So you're able to do other things outside the normal ones that you do. You can look for the percentile, the 80th percentile, see this one also has it. The same for the, some charts have that, some charts do not. All right, so let's look at another thing. So let me probably open this up. This might be the last thing I may be teaching on this. For instance, you see in September and October there's a change, so you can come here, right click, and ask it to analyze, explain the increase. So there's an algorithm in there that will be running and looking through your data set to see what could have explained this increase. So it's telling you that it's because weekday and weekend had the majority of increase. So the weekend offsetting the decreasing, he said the weekday is offsetting the decrease of weekend. So that's one explanation. Another explanation is weekday, weekend. This is month here, this is month here. This is month year weekday, this is month year and product. So it's showing you that between September and October, Carretera and Velo accounted for the majority of the increase. So that's another way of also finding out why there's an increase or a decrease. It will go through all the data set and look at the correlations in the data and give you something. You can actually change the data type to maybe a scatter plot. So you see the highs and the lows, medium. So this is per the discount type, I guess. Let me change rather this to a scatter. And you see that Carretera and Velo may be accounting for the most. So there was a decrease from September to October, and it's mainly Carretera, as well as I think VT also was another cause. So this is something extra for you. You can find out, especially in a trend, you can find out why this or why that is causing. I wanted to find, let's say, let's try and use the COVID data and let me see what we can glean from. So the same COVID data, let me check and see if the COVID data is linked to the date table. Let me connect the date to date. All right. So now with the COVID data, I'm just trying to do a trend. So let's go to the COVID formulas and look at the confirmed. Let me see which formula is this. Okay. So the total confirmed per date. Let me look at my calendar and pick the date. Let me change this to a proper date. Alright. So there I have it. Let me go to my analytics. Can you see this time I'm giving the, because it's a date, a normal date, and it's continuous, not broken, I can actually forecast also. So you can add a forecast, 10 points, maybe just, let me just forecast the next 4 days. Ignore the last point. The confidence interval is 90. Auto seasonality, and let's apply. So it's just formatting. Let me do it 10 so as maybe it's clearer. So it is forecasting the next 10 days based on the parameters we gave it. So you can give us the confident band, line of fill, so there is a band, there is a high, low, upper and lower band. I mean, if you understand forecasting, you understand the higher band and the lower band. Also, interestingly, we can also, okay, this data set cannot find abnormalities. Let me uncheck the forecast and see if, yes. Now I can find abnormalities, which is something I'll teach in probably one of my classes. Explain the, so it's showing you the trends, expected maximum and expected minimum, and using that expected maximum and minimum, so you can make your sensitivity as close as maybe 90%. Apply. So as it's very sensitive, every abnormally, so it's picking some anomalies already. So you see up here, this and that are all abnormalities, the ones that are being highlighted. So I can ask it to explain. So it's just even showing us the possible explanation that we couldn't find explanation for this anomaly. So total confirmed was unexpectedly low on Wednesday, 20th January 2021. Interesting. It had a value of 9686205, so which is below the expected range. So there are ranges that is using. So this is another way of doing outlier detection in Power BI. All right, I think this is enough of visualization. Let's go to probably the when to use what charts and which charts not to use. Okay. All right. I think this being the last video, we might have to go further. I hope you're enjoying the class. Visualization is something I'm so much passionate about. I specialize in data storytelling, so I'm always passionate about visualizations. So this is comparison charts, change over time, part to whole, flow, ranking, spatial distribution, correlation. At least the charts have been grouped in these formats to help you know which chart to use at what time. So when you are looking, I'll probably add this to my materials that I'll be given so as you can actually go through this yourself. When you are doing comparisons, these are the charts that I do. The ones with the green are actually the ideal ones that is recommended. So clustered bar chart, clustered column chart, to compare the magnitude of measures. Let's say countries per countries, you are comparing countries, you are comparing segments. You can use these charts. So these are several charts that can be used. Change over time, like I said, when you are looking at trend, always use line charts. Don't use line charts for any other thing apart from trends. And these are several other types of line charts in the BI that you can use. For ranking, when you are ranking from one order to, you realize that I use the clustered bar chart. It could rank to show US was the most sold, blah blah. And spatial, also, let's say you are doing maps during the elections, you saw a lot of people using spatial maps to show which areas what is. And there's the flow, and this shows the flow from one place. You saw the waterfall chart, which we used in the analysis when we asked it to analyze. There's part to whole, where you see the pie chart, the donut, and distribution, as well as correlation. Normally the scatter chart is our best bet for correlation. It's unfortunate that, so I'll add this to the various I'll add this to the link so as you can download and go through it yourself. So this is one of the tools that I'll be giving you. Reminding me of the scatter chart. Let me do one last thing. I've said one last thing, I'm sure, several times. This might be the true last. Maybe last but one. Okay. So let's start using the scatter chart to see something. So my details is, let me still go on the financial. Or let's use the COVID cases. Let me try with the financials first. So let me plot maybe total sales. In scatter, you are looking at correlation, so it's definitely two measures you'll be looking at: total sales versus the profit margin. That's my x and y axis. The details is based on the country. Then my size is based on the sales. So now these sizes are based on the sales. So the bigger the size, or let me use profit. It seems the sales, they all seem same. All right. Can even use a legend for them. I can go and change the color so as we'll be able to see different colors for. Let me show all. Let's use different colors for different countries, at least so as we can distinguish them. Right. So this is total sales by profit margin. So let me probably change the axis. I always told you that start from 0, starting from 20 million, and this, the x-axis is also starting from 11.5 or so. 0. All right. So at least now we know they are all here rather. That was strange. All right. So I think USA has the most, France, the blue, has the most profit and the most sales. Okay. Now let's go back to my fields and finish the fields. Let me get what we call a play axis. So I'll go to my calendar and get a play axis, which is month, year. It went rather to, I said that it's always best you should, or let me just use the months. Right. So now I'm going to, oh, I have to go and change my colors again. Just want us to be able to follow. All right. So now I've plotted them based on month to January, February, March, April, May, and the total sales versus profit margin. So I can now play and find out how they felt from January, February, March, April. So you see it moving. All right. So I can then trace, for instance, this country. Where is it? Canada. So it goes up, down, up, down. So it's haphazard. Let's look at, almost all of them are haphazard. So the sales versus profit is undulating. You can actually follow it through and see properly what is happening. Is it following a particular pattern whereby a particular month has the most sales? All right. So that is the last thing that I'm going to teach today. But before we leave, I mean, if you want to actually get training for your company, you can always contact me with a comment or contact me via my email address. Also, one thing I always tell people is that to be able to properly build right visuals, always ensure that you get the what I call the inspiration. So sometimes I have some downloaded inspirations, so you can, like I said, go to Pinterest, or you look for something that is cool and nice, and you say, okay, I want to build this dashboard. um, I want to see if I can find one on my, so okay, I think this is one. You can look at this and say, okay, this is my motivation or my inspiration. I want to build something like, these are just cards. So what you need to always be able to break down when you see a nice visual is that, what did they use? Are they using cards? Are they using this? And they have emoticons from flaticon.com. You can go there and download these icons to help give it. So you can go online, look for a nice dashboard and say, I want to build something like this. It's always important, because you might not be an artist, but there are several good people who can design something cool that you can copy and learn. Alright, so my general tutorial for Power BI ends today. We'll continue with Python with Eugene Foley in the month of February. So if there are any things that you did not get, you could actually contact me or give a comment, and maybe in the month of April I may do other videos on Power BI, and probably do R in May. Let's hopefully, God willing, I'll be able to do that. In the month of March, I'll be doing some interviews with some people in the field. So it's been an exciting 5 days, and hope you've enjoyed the class and learned a lot. Remember to subscribe to my channel and share with a friend. Thank you.